Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, I greet you in the name of academic resurgence. One of the most difficult things is to be at the beginning of such an important and august occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to share insights into the theme, Renaissance in Higher Education, Meeting Industry Expectations. Indeed, this is a broad-based theme which touches on vital issues to which institutions in our developing countries should be responsive. Motu College could not have chosen a better theme for purposes of revitalizing research efforts and link with practicalities of education. Purposeful education is that which helps us to live here and now. Hence my theme, Education for Work, supported with research. Participants have gathered here today to share insights. And one is reminded of this wind of revitalization that is sweeping across Southern Africa in particular. Yesterday, we were in Swakopmund, Namibia, where we had a conference of similar magnitude where the Distance Association for Southern Africa met to share views. Day before yesterday, we were in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, for a similar theme. And as recently as August, we were in Harare, where the Zimbabwe Open University invited people to deliberate on issues like this. I bet you will agree with me that this is indeed a wind that is sweeping across our region. We should be pleased to be part of this wind. And I'm reminded of these few words by a scholar who shall remain anonymous. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyages of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now at Ubuntu, afloat, and we must take the current when it sails or lose our vengeance. Ladies and gentlemen, this audience of scholars and practitioners is experiencing this time, and it is presumed that henceforth we will start flowing with the tide, buffeting the waves towards purposeful renaissance of our educational strategies. I now turn on to the brief presentation titled Research and Access to Education for Work, Practices in Southern Africa. And I think from our deliberations, we will be able to extrapolate to other regions of the world. Let me begin then with the overview. In the overview, as you will realize, I begin with a brief introduction, share with you the background, discuss the current situation, share statistics on unemployment, then move on to innovation and entrepreneurship in general, then innovation and entrepreneurship in higher education. But because I am so deeply engrossed in the Botswana situation, I will share with you a few instances of the Botswana experience, then have something on research. Thereafter, I will give you valedictory reviews by way of recommendations. We now move on to the background. The background to this paper is premised on document analysis, oral interviews, and participant observations. We, in the background, recognize that in almost every country in the world, to say nothing of our sub-region, there is a reduction of job opportunities, and there are limited skilled manpower resources in technical and vocational education. The efforts which are present are at best described as fragmented, both at the lower and higher levels. Also, we have limitations in research, hence this gathering seeks to see how best we can move forward. Regarding formal employment, we have all witnessed what has been going on in Italy, in Greece, in Spain, who have been our leaders in the first world. If they begin to have flu, what more with us? Probably we too will catch the flu. There is shrinkage of formal employment, and if you look around our streets, even in Gaborone, in Harare, in Johannesburg, you notice that there are so many people on the streets whom we describe as the informal sector employment. Small scale and micro businesses in the retail, manufacture and agriculture seem to be on the resurgence. Limited access to technical and vocational training, generally referred to as TVET, seem to be characteristic of our sub-region. Possession, ladies and gentlemen, of requisite skills is limited both at lower and higher levels. Now, you may then ask, what is the background? There is a historical dimension to this situation, which I shall characterize as historical developments. Going back to 1960, there was the report of a commission on higher education in Nigeria, headed by Sir Eric Ashby. You find this in a book by Thompson, published as far back as 1984. In that commission, it was recognized that there is intimate relationship which exists between education and economic development. That is why you find a place like Modesto College foists this idea of seeking this alliance between economic development and the education provided. Responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, of the governments to involve themselves directly in economic activities through education was at that point in time not as widely and fully recognized. As a direct consequence of the emerging realization, technical and vocational education were added to normal school education. So you can see the historicity of this development dates back to the 60s. Let me continue with the historical development and observe that funding, much as there was this passion to develop TVET, remained a major constraint, and this inhibited forward planning. Evidence from advanced countries, the likes of Japan, the likes of United Kingdom, the likes of USA, signify that during their periods of rapid economic growth, a very significant relationship exists between growth, economic growth, and the kinds of technical and vocational education provided to their citizens. The new wave of thinking was largely generated by the UNESCO international conferences held in different places like Japan, Santiago, and for us, the highlight is the 1961 Addis Ababa conference. This lit a fire, and governments henceforth planned education provision continuously in relation to manpower needs at the lower and higher levels. Having said that, what were the responses from the countries? Those of you who are familiar with the once upon a time called Rhodesia, there was a colonial Rhodesia. There was a new type of secondary school that was introduced around 1966, where there was a paradigm shift. For this particular type of secondary school, which was referred to as F2, 2/3 of the subjects offered were supposed to be practical subjects. The technical and vocational education subjects offered in a given school depended on where the school was located. If you were in Harare, you would then have as one of your subjects metalwork. If you were in the rural areas, wherever, you would have agriculture as one of your subjects. What was the logic? The logic was that you educate in order to prepare somebody for work. So it was thought that if you are in an environment where there is agriculture, you would then receive technical and vocational training to suit you in that particular environment. What about Botswana? Botswana originated the brigades, a pattern of technical and vocational training for our out-of-school youth. That was around 1965. Kenya also took up this model for what it called village polytechnics. This history is quite critical if we are to map our way forward, if we are to conduct meaningful research, if we are to be able to advise our respective governments. The brigades in Botswana, ladies and gentlemen, were conceived of as a means of providing a more appropriate form of training than that afforded by conventional secondary school courses. I'm not sure among us whether there are people as ancient as myself. During our days, it was something to boast about when we studied Latin. We went to school, high school, and said, I'm doing Latin. But today, when you come to think of it, I don't see how much my Latin helps me. Probably, as somebody said, today, what we need is more bags of maize than more volumes of poems. I don't know about that. Now, the brigades in Botswana seek to promote rural and urban development and operate in various fields including building, carpentry, agriculture, mechanics, and textiles. Always, as I am presenting the few sections, I want you to think of your own country and see how it gels in. But there were limitations. What were the limitations to these responses? First and foremost, the status of technical subjects and that of its teachers tended to remain low. I know of a colleague who went to train as an agriculture teacher, but today he decided to branch and hold a PhD in education because he considered agriculture to be inferior. And I'm sure in your countries you have experienced this. We tend to emulate academic subjects. Training also attracted lower ability learners and those who had failed from academic streams. The tendency by teachers who taught in those courses for TVET tended to emphasize theoretical aspects. Why? Because these are the more elevated feature of academic institutions. There were also limited opportunities for employment to absorb products. And in any case, the vacancies to train were very limited. So that was a limitation. What is the current evidence? I think I will give you an instance of South Africa. And I want you to think of your respective countries. How is it in Libya? How is it in Zimbabwe? How is it in the States? How is it in Japan? First of all, in South Africa, according to IRIN 2008, access to structured education and training is far greater for urban than rural populations. How is it in Botswana? Too little TVET of the TVET reflects the needs and interests of the most disadvantaged members of the South African society. Who are the disadvantaged? Our women, population, those in remote areas, those who are in prisons, They are also disadvantaged. You can add to the list. There have been long-standing complaints in South Africa that the country has tended towards underdevelopment of intermediate skills. Then finally, managing the paradox of developing skills in a hostile labor market and environment. The hostility aspect you can easily appreciate where you see on TV so many things happening when the citizens are saying you are taking our jobs from us, when they are referring to foreigners. Let me move on to Mozambique. Just as an example to signify what is happening in Southern Africa, PID 2002 observes that the employment segment is growing and demanding more skilled labor in Mozambique. Remember, Mozambique was in a prolonged period of war. Now they are out of it, but there is great demand for skilled labor. The shift in the skill profile has triggered a sharp increase in the need for technical and vocational skills, especially in the metal, gas, telecommunication, and agriculture. Is there anything like that in Botswana? The training system responsible for shaping the skills profile has been slow to respond to the changing labor market demands. What is it like in your own country? Now, the TVET provided mainly by the DNET, National Directorate of Technical Education, the Ministry of Labor, NGOs and churches provides limited access. What are we then doing as researchers if we were in Mozambique to ensure that this is rectified? As observed by the World Bank 2004, it identified in Mozambique that the issues of relevance, quality, access and equity were some of the key constraints. I then wish to reflect and share with you statistics on unemployment and inflation. You will see a list of Mauritius, South Africa, Lesotho, Mozambique and so forth. And to single out just that any one of the countries, if you look at Lesotho, 45% unemployment, 5% inflation rate. These are figures between 2003 and 2008. But what do we see when we look at Japan? 4.1 and inflation rate 0.4%. The question to ask is, what do these figures tell us? To what extent can research assist in ensuring that even we in Botswana improve our situation so that the inflation rate, the unemployment rate is reduced? Is there any way of instituting research that comes up with something that can improve our lot? Let me then move on to the conclusions, probably singling out just one where we can say where the rate of unemployment is high, inflation is correspondingly high. And remember that some people say, even if I send somebody to do a course, what will it help when there are limited job opportunities? I want to persuade you to agree with me that it is better to be skilled and unemployed than to be unskilled and unemployed. Now, Southern Africa is extremely interesting. What sort of situations are calling for increased access? When I read out these situations, find which country you can place into them. I don't have the answers. Can you think of a country where post-conflict situation, there's a post-conflict situation where the citizens have for years been deprived of opportunities for skills development? Can you think of any? Can you think of situations where political dispensation favored a particular racial group in terms of skills training before independence? Probably South Africa, probably also Mozambique, where we had the Portuguese. I am not quite sure, I'm not clear there. What about a situation where a a government turns against its own people to maintain political power, resulting in the brutalization of its citizens by the state machinery to silence them. I can't think of anyone. I'm not intelligent there. What about a situation where citizens are displaced or reallocated pieces of farmland without the necessary skills in agriculture? A typical Modesto who is an illiterate person who can only teach a JC class is said, come on, there's a big farm for you, go and do farming. I don't have even transport to go there. I don't even have the means to pay the worker. I don't even know the means where to begin. The next time I go there, in this big, beautiful house that has been abandoned, somebody is making fire there, and they have no clue. But I can't think of a country really that is like that. I wish to move on to the very last one, where situations in which the government recognizes the need to empower its citizens, but finds that conventional training institutions cannot meet the demand to train its people. Allow me to say Botswana fits here. Now, you may then say, what are some of the basic research findings? Bokodol conducted a survey in 2001 in Greater Gaborone, which confirmed exactly what I said, that there are situations in which the government recognizes the need to empower its citizens, but finds the conventional training institutions cannot meet the demand to train its people. Those we interviewed expressed the wish to access basic training in business management. We went actually literally through the streets, vendors, kiosks, and people said we would do very well with a bit of training. And many of those running small and micro enterprises revealed that they did not have any formal training and expressed the need for courses to learn vocational skills. That's where Butu comes in. That's where Bokodol comes in. And in your country, think which institution could come in. Now, innovation and entrepreneurship. People have always thought that entrepreneurship and innovation are things meant for the business world. An education institution like Butu is a business entity. It must conduct its affairs in an entrepreneurial manner. That is why we are saying, as we gather here today, we must promote education for work, which has far-reaching implications for the government. We must go beyond rhetoric, for it is often easier to preach than to practice. And I think Botu is demonstrating that they don't just preach. At higher education, we must distinguish between initial and continuing vocational education and training at tertiary level. What are we doing in the areas? Here is somebody who has done welding. They have a certificate. That is at a lower level. But they also want to access higher education. What sort of interventions are in place? You probably are saying to yourself, if he is or she is welding or dressmaking, why don't you develop a diploma that will elevate his or her entrepreneurial skills? Probably a bachelor's in business and entrepreneurship would come in handy. What are you as researchers advising the government? The issue of articulation from a lower skill to a higher skill tends to be a problem. So what interventions are in place? Let me move on to something that is very passionate on my heart by sharing the Botswana experience. Once upon a time, my executive director and I were sponsored by ILO, International Labour Organization, to conduct a survey on the Botswana National Vocational Qualifications Framework. And this is an instance of how Botswana has been able to leverage itself by having what we call a sectoral qualifications framework. It has positive aspects which I want you to emulate in your different countries as you leave this gathering. There is enhancement of self-monitoring through introduction of quality auditing instruments. That has really lifted the Botswana perspective. There is concurrence by employer organizations that qualifications awarded to employees after the companies had participated in the development of curricula were more relevant to the workplace. Don't educate me in Latin and then expect me to work in a factory where garments are manufactured. That is out of question. The Botswana National Qualifications Framework under BOTA has encouraged collaborative effort between providers of vocational courses and industry, leading to raise the stakeholder awareness of gaps in the skills of Botswana. And before enactment of the BNVQF, there was no systematic timeline for a given qualification. This is a very critical thing. Student A does a diploma in project management at a particular college. Student B does a diploma in project management in 12 months at another institution. Student C does a diploma in project management in 18 months. What are we saying? We are saying there is no rationalization. So this is the advantage, or this is the intervention that BNVQF has managed to bring. Now let me turn on to practitioner research. There's agency. As I was reading the papers, I realized that practitioner research, which we also refer to as action research, many of the 30 papers and above, the wonderful papers I just saw, are instances of practitioner or action research. I saw something like ICT application in accounting by Modesto SME. I saw something like exploratory study of English language proficiency of students entering tertiary education, the case study of Putu College, retail stock and loss control in Bulawayo, and so forth. This means this is a critical way of informing access and research. Now, when you come to the agency of practitioner research, we facilitate that through what we call the case study. In my experience, I sat at a very important conference in Malawi where 75 papers were presented. Out of these 75, 68 were case studies. I sat at a conference in Cochin, India, where 266 papers were presented over a week. And out of these, 80% were case studies. How do we do our case studies? To what extent are you going to present your case studies so that someone leaves this place saying, I came, I saw, I learned. As our colleagues go to the different sections, you who are going to present, we expect you to tell us and then guide us so that when we leave this place, we are going to act. Now, what is the significance of the case study? I want to leave you, I have invested quite a bit of time in how exactly do we deal with the case study so that it is impactful. I want to leave you with 3 criteria of your case study. Think of it before you even deliver. There are 5 of them, but I'll just stick to 3. The first one is what we call democratic validity. how do you ensure there is democratic validity in your presentation of the case study about indigenous entrepreneurial ownership, a case for Francistown? What is democratic validity? It refers to the extent to which all key stakeholders in your research have been consulted and are engaged in the inquiry. Are you going to demonstrate democratic validity in your presentation? The second one, catalytic validity. In science, we know of a catalyst. With catalytic validity, it refers to the transformative potential of the research finding. Are you going to transform our thinking when you present to us your contribution of affiliate marketing, a survey of Botswana tertiary education? Let's see whether it comes up. I want to close with the third one, what we refer to as dialogic validity. This refers to whether there is trustworthiness, namely the extent to which the study stimulates ongoing discourse even after this conference among participants and interested stakeholders. Let us engage in dialogue. Are our papers going just to gather dust after this meeting, where we just go, drink tea, congratulate each other, then that's the end of the story? To be borne in mind, let me share with you the view I hold passionately. Research begins with an individual committed researcher, yourselves. A number of individual committed researchers leads to institutional profiling, like what Utu is doing. Profiled institutions researching together, that is Utu, Bokodo, UB, Midland State University, that university in Libya. That actually leads to, if it is in one country, a nation of researchers. But when nations collaborate in research, the result is an oriented sub-region. Can we try it? Let's now recapitulate, as I am about to come to the close of my presentation. As somebody has advised, when you are giving a presentation, stand up, speak up, shut up. I'm about to shut up. To recapitulate, ladies and gentlemen, upon reflection of the foregoing discussion, you will find the details in the paper. The following key points about access to education for work have come to surface. Firstly, access is far greater in urban than in rural areas. Secondly, the disadvantaged are the ones with more limited access. Thirdly, there is prevalence of curricula that is more institution rather than demand-driven. Fourthly, there is need for lifelong learning for self-employment. I don't think we stop learning. What is your definition of education? Somebody has said education or learning is what remains when you have forgotten what you have learned. Now, when you look at what we are doing, we keep on learning until we are surprised by death. Fifthly, there is increased awareness by developing countries to plan vocational education and training more systematically. And research seems to be lagging behind. Let's conduct research. The modalities, as Mr. Mduma indicated, this is the time to network and say, how can we do research? I want to come to recommendations. In the recommendations, would you agree with me that institutions providing technical and vocational courses should network with sister institutions in the region in order to adapt relevant programs to their institutions? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Let me share with you, in Botswana, at Bokodol, we had a course called English for Professional Purposes. This course was developed for our police service. The police service in any country is faced with so many people who come in and out of the country. We did our survey and established that our police had very serious problems taking statements, and very serious problems writing reports. We visited police stations and requested examples of writing reports or statements or translation, and came up with that course. There are 2 countries which shall remain nameless where these courses are now being offered because of networking. There are also new developments in terms of courses available for use both at initial and tertiary levels, referred to as open education resources. You don't have to buy, except you use them under what we call Creative Commons Share Alike License, CCSA. I would not have done service to myself and my institution if I don't say, consider open and distance learning model as a viable route towards increasing access. Would you like to consider that? Initiate inter-institutional research initiatives. Right now at Bokodol, we've done a number of projects, a book which is online, written by different scholars in different universities. Currently, we are working on a book on how to prepare your dissertation at a distance. This is very problematic. I understand in one country there's an animal called Zimche. Zimche in that particular country that shall remain nameless is saying, you must do your doctorate or else out. We see as supervisors, I supervise mainly in the area of entrepreneurship, that people who are enthusiastic fumble. They don't even know what is expected in chapter 1. There is no training of what is expected in chapter 2. And right now, I'm coordinating that book, which will be published sometime next year, with supervisors from 15 universities in Southern Africa. This is what we mean. Why don't you initiate that from here? After all, when you come to think of it, a candle does not lose anything by lighting another candle. Even this full stop which I'm handling here becomes lighter if 2 of us hold it. I want to conclude by saying, ladies and gentlemen, please smile, I'm now concluding. All is well that begins well. This conference, after the blessings we had from the prayer, from the director here at Butu, from Mr. Mutuma, seems to have begun well. Butu College, for your initiative, we give you accolades. Participants who have traversed the globe to this August conference, we give you accolades. Participants who will present excellent papers, we give you accolades. Participants who will contribute to the lively discussions, we give you accolades. The enabling government of Botswana for this democratic opportunity where we don't have guns surrounding us, we give you accolades. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all cherish this historic moment. I thank you.